Hello everyone, welcome to this tutorial. Blender 3.5 is out, it is amazing. The hair system, the new assets for hair, they are incredible. Today we're taking a look at those new assets and we're gonna be making some dreadlocks with it. Alright, so we're gonna make hair that starts short on the sides and grows longer, and on the top you will have these nice looking dreadlocks sticking out, okay? Something that was previously quite hard to achieve, but with these assets, it's quite manageable. Alright, so let's get into that. Blender 3.5, if you don't have it, please download it for this tutorial. I have a head model that I downloaded for free, and I textured it quite quickly and easily. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, so please don't judge my skin realism. And yeah, this is something that we're going to be working with. Alright, so how do we add the initial hair? Very easy, select your head, Shift A, curve, and we're gonna be selecting the empty hair. Alright, now you have two things to watch out for. Of course, the surface is gonna be head because that's the one we have selected. Now the UV map is something that is important when you're working with this new hair system, right? The geometry node hair system, because it uses your UVs. Alright, so if you have overlapping UV maps, then you'll get an error and it can mess up your hair system as well. And that's also why I made a new UV map for the hair system itself, right? So the textures will be using the default one and the UV map uses hairs. Okay, so make sure that if you use the system that your UVs are unwrapped properly, okay? So we have our hair system added. You can see that I had two for some reason. The curves, you can name this. This is going to be, for example, the side hair. Rename that and you can go to Object and change that to Sculpt mode. And then we're getting into the hair section part, right? So this is very default. That was already the case in Blender 3.4 and I think 3.3 as well. I'm not sure, but it was already the case before, right? This was another method to add hair already. Okay, so I usually start off with the density brush. Set that to about 0.5. Let's see how dense that is. That's looking quite fine actually. Alright, so let's go 0.04 maybe. Let's see, I want some nice initial density. And what I want to do is like have this initial strands to represent each and single dreadlock on the top, right? Now, we're now working in the side hair, which means I'm gonna be doing... Actually, let's do the side hair first, okay? So I'm still going to be in the same density. Maybe I go up it a little bit for this because we will have shorter hair on the side. So let's decrease it to 0.02. There we go. And then let's paint in that side hairs, right? So first I'm gonna be enabling the X symmetry, right? We're on the X axis, so I want the left and right side of the head to be the same. And now we can just start drawing it in pretty much. All right, so I'm gonna draw in the initial like shape of the hairline first, which is gonna be about, usually it starts about right there, and then it moves up a little bit, maybe a little bit to the back, and then you have this that like sticking out part, I guess, goes up and to the side, right? Something like that. All depends on the hairline. And we can always tweak that, by the way. And I'm gonna around the ear, right? Don't want any hair on the ear. That's not how it works. I'm gonna go to the back and then go to round, something like that, I guess. I'm not completely sure right now. I can feel it for myself. Something like this is fine. All right. So this is the entire hairline. Now we only need the sides part. So I want it to be, let's say from here, and then we're gonna go to the side, and then we're gonna make it go down a little bit, and then connect here. Right, so imagine your bald grandpa who still grew out the side parts, right? That's pretty much the part we're looking for. And we can just fill this up with the hairs. And there we go. So even though you increase the size of the brush, the density will all remain the same because that's how density works, right? So now we've got the density and I'm gonna be deleting the hairs that are in the front here, right? I'm not gonna need this hairline right now. We're gonna be adding it later. Right, so this is our balding character right now. Beautiful. And what I'm gonna do is set that initial hair length, okay? So I'm gonna go to grow and shrink, set this to shrink, and set the strength down to about 0.3. I'm gonna increase this radius, right? And I'm just gonna make this fade, this skin fade of hair that you can see when you go to the barber, for example. I usually get a skin fade as well, but I usually still wear a hat because I like it. And then I'm just gonna pretty much try to get this nice and even in like the transition from short to longer. All right, beautiful. I'm no barber, so I'm gonna roll with what I can. Here we go. Make that side a little bit shorter as well. Amazing. Now there's a minimum length, so you won't really be able to remove hairs. All right, that's nice. Because even if we do it too much, the hairs will stay there in place beautifully. There we go. This is going to be a little bit smoother like that. That's looking decent, I guess. Make this a little bit shorter. This is all just personal preference and tweaking a little bit, okay? All right, so this doesn't look too good on the side there. We're gonna be increasing this a little bit so we get that rounding of the head back a little bit at least. There we go. Now let's shrink in this front part a little bit. There we go. Now we can always tweak this later, so don't even worry about this too much yet. All right, we're going to be playing around with the different kinds, different types of the assets first, and how can you access those assets. All right, so this is just going to be our default thing, default side hair set, and you can see we got some nice looking transitions. At least I think it's fine. There we go. Let's go to object mode, and let's swipe this window to the left there, and let's set this to the asset browser. There we go. Now this is everything we have, and we're gonna go to the hair section. This is all the hair stuff that we can use that comes with Blender. It's amazing. They added a lot, right? So there's a few things we're gonna be needing right now. All right, so let's set this to rendered view first. I am in cycles, all right? It's gonna look different in Eevee. That's a very, very important thing to note. If you work in Eevee, then your final result is going to look a little bit different. For example, I think it depends on the render settings, right? So how high the resolution of your curves are. By default, I think Eevee has a lower set subdivision of the curve, which is going to look more blocky. And in cycles, I think by default it's set a little bit higher, so you can get some more resolution from the start. Now you can also see this thickness of the hair in cycles is different. And I also see a hair that is for some reason on the air. So I'm gonna delete that real quick. There we go. Right, so the first one that we're gonna get into is the one that you're gonna be using almost every time. And it's the set hair profile. All right, so I can just select it and drag it into our hair system. You can see a little bit of changes, but you can go to the modifier properties, and then you will pretty much, so the first one is actually the deformation on our hair itself, right? So it takes into account the grooming we do and stuff like that. The second one now is the set hair profile curve. And that's basically the thickness and the profile of your hair, right? So the factor max, if I decrease this, you can see the hair gets thinner and thinner, right? So that's something you will have to get into at some point, because by default, the hair is almost always too thick, right? And you can always set the shape as well. So from which point do you want it to really get thinner, right? You can set that to a longer and to a shorter amount, okay? That's pretty much what this does. Right, the second one I'm gonna add is just some density addition, right? And there's two ways to really do this. You can add the duplicate hair curve one, or interpolate also works. Interpolate is a little bit harder in my opinion with, for example, the specified placement of hairs that we have, right? We have this hairline and stuff like that. I just prefer using duplicate hair curves for this one. So we're gonna drag that onto the hair as well. You can see right away it's gonna be adding some additional hairs. All right, there's a few things that we can tweak here. I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but it's basically the amount of hairs and the distance each hair duplicate can be from its parent. All right, so 0.1 is quite large. I'm gonna set this down to 0.03, something like that. So we have this like hairline that stays a little bit more refined. All right. And the rest of these settings we don't really have to worry about right now. That's always nice to hear, isn't it? Right, the next one we have is going to be important later on as well. And it is actually a snap hair to curves, or sorry, attach hair curves to surface is what its name is, I think. We can drag that on. And it basically means that it's going to be moving those starting points of the hairs to the face, right, to the head. And it basically is the same as like a set position node with the endpoint selection of a curve. I think it's the same method they use here. And it just snaps those starting points back onto your mesh, okay? So one thing you have to do is just select the surface that you want it to snap back to, right? It's going to be our actual head model. And then we have to make sure that UV map is set on the right one as well, of course. So we remember we had a different one for that. That's called, I think, hairs. There we go. Now it actually looks at the correct UV map and it matches the hair system as well. All right, so that's pretty much all we need to do now for this one. Later on, we're going to be adding so a little bit of noise, stuff like that. But that's what we're going to be doing if we're going to be blending it into the other hair system. So for now, I want to focus on the main attraction, the main ride, which is going to be the longer hair on the top, which is going to be a lot of fun. All right, so we can add as many hair systems as we want on a mesh. All we have to do is select it, Shift A, curve, empty hair. There we go. Okay, so how do we tweak, add, and adjust this? Go to sculpt mode, hit the plus sign or hit the density, whichever one you prefer. I prefer density, and that means you can't get over a certain amount of hairs. All right, so I'm going to set this to about 0.04, the distance minimum. And I'm just going to draw in that initial main hair line there at the front. And let's enable X symmetry as well. Drag this to the side a little bit. And I'm just going to find out where it's going to attach, something like there. And that's going to be a little bit too chaotic. So I'm going to just drag it to the left there. All right, so this is looking like quite a decent hairline, I guess. There we go. And then we can just fill this in all the way to the back there. So fill up that entire bald spot on the head. There we go. Drag all of that in and make sure you have a little bit of an intersection with the other hair system, right? Because this is all about blending two separate hair systems together. And it's important that we have a little bit of an overlap area where we can tweak it to look like a blending area, okay? So let's make sure that we have a little bit of hairs intersecting there on that ridge line. There we go. Drag that back as well. Beautiful. Now let's actually tweak the length of this hair. Okay, so let's actually get to that length. Grow and shrink brush. Let's hit the plus and I'm going to set this at projected. All right. And then we're going to be growing this hair out a little bit to the length that we really want to have. Right. So I want this to be quite long so we can have a nice play session with that hair, okay? So we can do some fun things, make some curls, stuff like that. Make sure everything is at least at the same kind of length. Okay, I think that looks already quite decent. It doesn't matter if it isn't perfect. It's going to be curling around anyway, which means that it doesn't matter if one is a little bit longer than the other. Right, so this is looking quite decent already. So let's do some grooming right away. So get that comb brush. And let's just snap this up a little bit. Set this to projected. I like it a little bit more. Projected, I'll just move it up a little bit. All right, get a nice looking shape there. And let's just see where we end up. All right, something like this. We can always tweak that. That's the fun part about using the geometry nodes. We can tweak it at any point and it will remain to look nice. Something like this. I'm already thinking about having a little bit of a noisy comb pattern, right? Something like that. Let's just find some more fun things. We can tweak the sides a little bit maybe. There we go. I don't want to touch those starting points too much because they're gonna be sticking out straight most of the time. And there we go. That's all we're gonna be working with. All right, so you can see it's a little bit chaos, but it's also quite smooth, still quite straight there. Amazing. All right, so let's now disable X symmetry and let's just create a little bit of a switch in symmetry. Remember, nothing is completely symmetrical all the time, especially not hair. Hair is damn random, so we can make this random as well. There we go, that's at least a little bit random. Let's go to the object mode. Now our character still looks partly bald, and there's a few ways we can fix that. Right, first of all, we need a little bit more hair. And we're gonna have two duplicate element nodes here, and the one The first one is going to be more about adding a bit more initial strands of hair, right? So remember, dreadlocks are really hairs that are going to be braided or twirled together pretty much, which means that the strands are going to be really visible, right? So I'm going to make those initial strands first, which means we're gonna be swiping a duplicate curves there on the hair. And we don't need 10, that's gonna be way too many. I'm gonna set this to 1. Beautiful, now we have an additional hair strand. We're gonna be adding the thing that we have to add, like I said before. All right, we're gonna be adding the set hair curve profile. Drag that on there, let's go to rendered view, and let's change the thickness to factor max is going to be like 0.2 perhaps. I don't want this to be too thin yet because I want to be able to see those curves. So that is looking quite nice for now. We will probably make this lower later. Right, next up we want some kind of noise because it's too straight, too perfect right now. We want it to be a little bit more chaotic, like hair tends to be. It's organic, right? It has been in the wind. You have been running, walking, swirling your head, stuff like that. So let's just swipe in the hair curve noise. There we go. It adds a little bit of noise from the start, but we need to tweak some settings. So for instance, the distance, I want this to be larger or 0.1. All right, so that already adds some nice chaos in there, looking quite all right. Next up, the scale as well. I want this to be higher, and this pretty much the frequency. So I'm going to set this to like 70. And that way we're just going to have some hair strands that are going to be sticking out more and other hair strands that are going to be more inwards. All right, that's going to be looking quite nice. And that will match very nicely with the curl section that we're going to be adding in a little bit as well. All right, so I'm going to fold all of these in for a second. Right, and now we are at the part where we have to add more hair. Right, so these are going to be our initial hair strands. And that is because we have added the noise after the duplicate hair curves. All right, which means that the hair curves that are close together are probably, they're going to be following the same kind of noise pattern a little bit, right? So they're going to be closer in the same directions. All right, and now we're going to add another duplicate hair curve. So just swipe that on, and we're going to set this to be higher, about 20, but I want the radius to be a little bit shorter. All right, the radius has to be a little bit smaller, 0.04 perhaps. And that way you can see that we really get those strands that are going to be sticking closer together. All right, so if you want them to be even close together, you can set them lower as well. You'll get this really nice looking thick strand hairs, but I think 0.04 works fine because we're also going to be clumping those hairs in the end a little bit in the end points, right? Then next is where we are going to really see some dreadlock action happen. Right, so the way to, there's no real like dreadlock asset, right? There's no dreadlock geometry node setup, but the basic way we can make it represent dreadlocks is by adding a curve, like a curl hair curve asset. So let's swipe that on there. Right away it's gonna look a little bit chaotic, but we're gonna be tweaking some of these settings. All right, and we're going to start this off by increasing the subdivisions a little bit, because otherwise we can't really get to the frequency that we need to make it look like an actual thread. Okay, so let's set that to about 3. And remember, the more we add here, the harder it's going to be for our system as well. But that's fine, because we are not going that crazy just yet. All right, so we have the curl start, the curl radius. The curl start, I don't want to start all of the curling right at the base of the hair. I want them to happen a little bit more outside of the head, right? So they're going to be moving out straight first, and then they're going to curl up a little bit. So let's set the curl start to 0.4, and let's really decrease the radius of the curls, like of the curls, because right now they're going to be going too crazy in the curling direction. So we're going to decrease that amplitude a little bit, so they're going to be sticking closer to that center line, right? So let's set this to 0.01, and there we go. Now we can already see some nice curling action happening, right? So this is also the point where we're going to be having a little bit of trouble in the viewport display, because it's not going to resemble the final look. So let's go to rendered view for now, and I'm going to select my head object, and what I'm going to do is go to the shader for a second, shader editor, and I'm going to disable subsurface for a little bit because it always makes it a little bit slower to render. So subsurface, just snap that down for a second. Let's head back to the, I'm not sure where we were actually, asset browser. Let's go back there and let's select our top hair again, and let's just increase that curl radius a little bit. All right, because they're quite close together now. Something like that is looking better. And we're gonna be having to up that frequency quite a lot as well. So let's set the frequency to 20. And let's see how that looks first. Not bad. Not bad at all. I think it's gonna be a little bit too thick though. So let's set this to 0.015 perhaps. That's looking better. Very, very nice. And let's set the factor end to about 2. There we go. Looking nice. And I'm going to decrease this again to 0.01 like we had it set on before. There we go. So now we have some very, very nice looking curls. All right. And let's actually check out the duplicate hair ones because I feel like they're still a bit too close together. So let's set it to about 0.05. There we go. Maybe a little bit more even. Let's see how 0.075 looks like. Better already. Okay, so that is looking nice for now. Let's continue. Right, the next thing we need is a little bit of clumping on the top, I guess, because we still have some hairs that really expand outwards there. For example, on those tips, we want them to be just locking in a little bit better, right? Just clump together. So let's do a clumping. Let's find it. This one, drag that on the hair. There we go. We can already see it happening. I think it's a little bit too strong though. So let's set the guide distance a little bit lower to about 0.06, I guess. And let's also set the, let's see the tip spread. We want them to be a little bit 0.02, right? We don't want them to be completely together. This is a little bit too far, 0.05 perhaps. Just so they spread out a little bit anyway, okay? This is looking quite decent. Next up, we're going to be adding another attach hair, okay? We did that for the short hair on the side as well. The reason why we need it is because some of these hairs are floating and they aren't attached to the head at all, right? So let's attach them, swipe that on there, and let's just set the surface back to our heads. They will be snapping back. Set the UV map, of course, back to hairs. Otherwise, it's gonna look weird. Hairs, there we go. That should be fine. All right, so now they're really gonna be moving back. Now you can see that this also changes the clumping once again. All right, we have clumping going on, but because of the hair attachment, they're gonna be moving a little bit weird. So we just have to do one more thing, drag another attach, oh sorry, that's the wrong one. We have already attached. We just need another clump hair on there. Okay, there we go. So now it's gonna be clumping just once again after that after that final attachment step. And the fun part about the attachment is that it's gonna be really making our hair look a little bit more random as well, because it's gonna be moving the initial positions of the hairs a little bit to attach them on the surface, and it's gonna give each hair a little bit of an offset as well. And that is just perfect because we needed some kinds of noise in there anyway, right? It was looking a little bit too plain, too perfect, right? This looks a little bit more crowded, a little bit more chaotic. Beautiful. Now I'm just going to set the factor to 0.9 just so we don't have that very hard clumping at the end, right? So we still have some kind of an outgoing tip like this. Okay, this is looking quite nice right now. All right, so let's select our hairs. Is there anything that we want to tweak? Let's see. I'm going to go into the curl options. All right, and I'm going to see if I want to tweak any of these settings. Do I think it's too far out? I want some strands to be a little bit closer together. So what I'm going to do is go to the second duplicate hair curves. And I'm going to set this back to 0.04. Right, so just so they're a little bit closer together. There we go. I think this looks very nice. Amazing. All right, now they may look a little bit more like curls than they look like dreadlocks. Let's see if we can get them a little bit more towards a dreadlock look. I think if we actually disable this initial duplicate hair curve node, There we go. And just add maybe a little bit more of those second strands. There we go. And maybe we can also go to the curl section and just increase that frequency to about 30. So they twirl a little bit more and they look like a little bit more like thicker hair strands pretty much. All right, know what I mean? Right, so this is actually looking quite nice already. It really looks like some rough hair there. But we have a quite weird blend going on there. All right, so let's go to our solid view and let's select our side hairs. All right, the side hair. Let's rename our initial one top hair. Top hair doesn't really matter. Let's select side hair. Let's go to that sculpt mode and let's just groom this hair a little bit. I'm going to make the top a little bit longer. So I'm going to select that grow shrink plus, and I'm going to make this top part a little bit thicker. Let's enable X-ray. Make it a oh, it's going to be a little bit too long. So let's make all of this just a little bit longer. There we go. And let's actually disable that top hair. There we go. A little bit longer. Like that. Doesn't matter how it looks right now. Don't worry about it. And let's make this a bit longer as well. There we go. So we get some very nice looking fades on the side. Just like that. Let's add some density. Let's select the density brush, go to curve shape and select length and shape for the interpolate. That's gonna mean that we have the same length if we add more density as the hairs that are there already, right? So if I want more there, we can just draw that in. Let's actually disable the duplicate hairs because that's gonna mess up how it looks a little bit as well. And let's just re-enable that now, right? Something like that. Looks nice. Let's go to the comb brush and I'm gonna comb all of this up a little bit. And now we really need our top section back, the top hair, so we can actually try to make this blend in more, right? So I'm gonna disable the duplicates for now. And actually, I think we do need it, yeah, because it's gonna change based on the attached hair curves to surface as well. So we need that to be taken into account. Let's drag this out so it's gonna blend with that side of the hair a bit, like there as well. Make that at least the same kind of direction in which the hair goes, all right? Something like that. That's gonna be going up, out. There we go. And now we're just gonna be making this look a little bit more chaotic, right? So this can be going a little bit more forwards and go a little bit more into like an intertwine kind of clumping pattern. This can go a little bit more to the right, just like that. This can go more to the right as well, to the left. Just make it look a little bit noisy because the hair on the top is noisy and long as well, right? So we just have to match this a little bit. All right, and this is a perfect way to really make that happen. Let's add a little bit of noise here as well. A little bit of noise, because this is already where it will start to curl. There we go. Let's watch this in the side view. Make that look nice as well. I think it looks great. And now there's just one more thing that really finishes that blending pattern. And that's going to be an asset that we haven't used yet. And it is called the frizz. Where is it? Frizz hair curves. Drag that on there. And the frizz hairs will basically move the tips in kind of a chaotic order, alright? And the fun part we can have here is that we can set the preserve length option, which is gonna mean that even those short hair on the sides, they're just gonna keep their original length. And that's really useful for this pattern, because if you would add a noise or whatever, and then you will have these hairs that are also going to be longer. They're going to become crazy, even though this hair doesn't have any room to really go crazy, right? Because it's very short. So this is a perfect one. I'm just going to tweak the distance to 0.06. So they are just looking a little bit more chaotic on the top there. So let's actually see how this looks now in the rendered view. There we go. All right, so we can really see that we now have some very nice blending going on in the side parts there. They're moving, the hairs are moving more into the actual top parts as well, right? So you get a nicer intersection. We can even move that more out if we really want. Go back to sculpt mode and move those hairs out a little bit more if you think you need more chaos there on the side parts, right? That's all personal preference. Again, because it is hair, right? It depends on how you like your hair to be. I think something like this will be fine. Let's go to rendered view and just see how it looks. There we go. I think this looks really nice. We can even add a little bit more density to fill more of these side gaps perhaps. Let's go to solid view. Let's actually go to sculpt mode and let's just add some more hairs where we may need them. Oh, Control Z that. Go to curve shape, interpolate length and shape. There we go. So let's add some more hair to fill up these side parts. Right, the shorter the hair gets, the more of the skin you will see, which means you can make some localized tweaks to just fill in this density if you like it to be a little bit more, or there, just add some new hairs, maybe there as well. All right, just go crazy. This is all your own kind of work, so you can just do it however you like it. I love how this is turning out. So let's go to object view now. Let's go to render view. Now we should have some nice looking, yeah, we got a nice fade going on there on the side. That's looking quite nice. I'm gonna select my top hair and I'm just gonna tweak one more setting in the duplicate hair curves, right? I'm gonna play with the distribution shape and it can just change the way this looks completely. What I'm gonna do is set this to 2. There we go. That's gonna tweak our initial parts of the hair a little bit more. And I'm gonna set the tip roundness up a little bit as well. So I'm gonna set it to about 1. That can just make them move a little bit more close together. All right, so I really love how this is turning out already, looking quite beautiful. And what I'm gonna do now is just go back to my skin, go to shader, and let's just get some of that subsurface back, right? Because in the end we still want that. So if I go to my front view, I want to be a little bit of light shining through those ears because that's looking quite natural. That's what happens with ears and subsurface scattering because the ear is very thin in that center part. And right now we can just select our hair, go to shaders, add new, and let's just delete the principled, Shift A. Let's search for principled hair BSDF. Swipe that in, connect that to the surface. And we can just set this to melanin concentration if we like that. And we can just swipe that up to be a little bit more dark, for example. And we can swipe the redness down completely, pretty much. And now we can just select the side hair, hold Shift, select the main hair, Control L, link those materials up, right? So now we have some black hair that is connecting really, really nicely. And I really love how this turned out, actually. All right, so I'm going to press Control B to rearrange my render region. There we go. Right, so here we are. In the end, all I did was really tweak this side part so the fade looked a little bit smoother just by making the hair on the bottom shorter and the hair on the top a little bit longer, right, on the side parts, just to make it look like an actual better barber cut. I'm no barber, so I don't really know how to do it that well, but I think we got away with it. So I really like how this turned out. Looks very natural as well, and I think we did a great job. I hope that really helped you in doing more hairstyles, right? To step away from only doing straight hairs and really get crazy with some more rough hair as well, which is very beautiful. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'll be incredibly happy with any of those. So then I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.